It's an international association of people who are trained to be trainers. And so, yeah, and I've really found in the past 8 years that MI has been really helpful in my work with teenagers and young adults. And today I'm going to give you a little bit of a glimpse of why motivational interviewing and adolescents have been a match in my practice. And I invite you to consider using MI with your adolescent clients or your clients in general. So here are our objectives. I feel like the screen is right here, but I'm guessing I'm not blocking anybody. I'm a little short.
No, you're good.
You're good? Okay. All right, so here are our objectives. I could talk about MI all day long, but today, for the sake of time, I'm going to give you a brief intro into MI and highlight all the features using MI with your adolescent clients. Okay, so how many of you work with adolescents? Okay, a fair bit of you. Great. What do you like about working with adolescents? Don't everybody shout at once. They're challenging. Yeah, they are.
There's an opportunity to make an impact at a younger age, not waste so much life.
It's true. So sometimes it's about prevention and not just intervention with adolescents. There's that potential there, right? Okay. What else?
They're active.
They're active. They move pretty fast. It does not get boring with adolescents. Okay. Anything else? Yes, Andy. This keeps happening.
They keep you up to pace with the current society of adolescents.
Yeah, and so we feel more in touch with the trends and what's happening because their lives move so fast and they are so current in everything, right? And at the same time, there are challenges, like Brian was saying, challenges in working with adolescents, right? A lot of times, it's not their own brilliant idea to come to therapy. A lot of times, it's the agenda of the parents, teachers, coaches, probation officers. Where's Gabrielle? Right there. Yeah, and so they're externally motivated. If you don't do this, you don't get to graduate. If you don't do this, we're going to take your car away. So a lot of times with adolescents, they're externally motivated instead of internally motivated, right? Adolescent narcissism can also be an issue. I call this the "you don't know me" phenomenon. That their emotions and their struggles are singularly their own, and nobody else can understand them. They sometimes have a short attention span. I have tried multiple times having a 50-minute session with a 13-year-old boy. It does not work. Pretty much it becomes a staring contest for about 20 of those 50 minutes, right? And then there's the generation gap that sometimes we may not understand what their world is like. Sometimes that becomes a distance for the teenagers. You don't know how hard it is to live in a society where somebody breaks up with you on Facebook. You're right, I don't. So tell me about it. And then there's also that counter-transference. Like you were saying, that for us, we see such potential in our clients, and we see them on this precipice, right? That we can see that every choice they make can impact their future. So we become extra vigilant with them and extra careful with them. Sometimes we need to check our own countertransference for that. Well, as you'll see in a few minutes, motivational interviewing and embodying the spirit and principles of motivational interviewing can address some of these. And hopefully you'll be able to see that. Motivational interviewing really focuses on building rapport and empathy with the clients and really try to see the world through their eyes, not to condone everything that they're saying, but to understand what's happening in their world. And really tapping into the values that they hold, the ideals that they keep, instead of what the values of their parents or their teachers. And MI, when it's done well, it has an impact within a 20-minute conversation. So you may not have to have a strict 50-minute conversation with them, or you can have technically a couple of conversations on different topics that they might be, that they're challenged with. Okay. So what is motivational interviewing? Bill Miller and Steve Rolnick, and you will see in the back table I've shown you the books that I've been reading and studying. So it's the second edition, and in 2012 they put out a third edition. Bill Miller and Steve Rolnick are like the founding fathers and the rock stars in the MI world. We geek out on Bill Miller and Steve Rolnick. So they have defined motivational interviewing as a collaborative communication style for strengthening a person's own motivation and commitment to change by eliciting and exploring the person's own arguments for change. Change talk. What part of this do you think would make it fit with adolescents? Which parts are important, do you think? Can you all read that? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
Sandy?
Adolescents have the tendency to want to always be right and go into, again, as you said, that narcissistic part of them that, milestone that they're in. So I think that just exploring that and kind of getting on their side, advocating in a sense.
Yeah, that person's own argument for change, right? Because are we the first person to have these conversations with these adolescents? Probably not. We're probably the 5th, 6th, 20th, right? And it's always what other people think the reasons are that they should change. So if a if a student doesn't do his homework, and his parents say, well, you need to do your homework so that you can graduate, so that you can go to a good college, so that you can get a good paying job, and then your life will be set. Looking at 15 years in advance is probably not within the realm of an adolescent state of mind. Maybe, though, if he gets to do his homework, his parents will be happier to let him borrow the car so that he can stay out late on a Saturday night so that he can go see his boyfriend or girlfriend. That may be his reason for doing homework, right? Okay. Which other parts are important, do you think? Wow, quiet room. Hi, Tom.
Enhancing motivation.
Okay, so,
like, generally speaking, adolescents, well, most people early in recovery aren't, like you said, they're externally motivated, which is fine. So just exploring that their own internal motivation gets them like moving out of like, because when somebody else is, whatever side of the argument you're on,
so strengthening that and moving them through the stages of change towards action, right? So there is that part of, yes, there is motivation, there's also the commitment to change. And with adolescents, sometimes being fickle, that doesn't really happen in a nutshell. Sometimes they want to change and then the next day they forget about it. So that commitment part is really important. What about collaborative? I think that's a pretty important one, especially with adolescents. Most adolescents have enough people telling them what to do, right? And when they're told what to do, that puts them in a one-down position. And adolescents, with their self-importance, which is, developmentally sound in creating their own identity, that when they're in a one-down position, that might not sit well with them. And we don't want to be yet another teacher or parent or coach. We don't want to be yet another adult in line waiting to tell them what's wrong with them or what they're doing wrong. We want to work alongside them. And change talk. So with motivational interviewing, there is always a goal for behavioral change. And MI works well with adolescents because most of the time teenagers need to change something. They need a behavioral change for something to happen. So stopping fighting at school, doing more schoolwork, stopping self-injurious behaviors, stopping using drugs and alcohol, right? And so with that, there is a direction there. We have an end goal with a client. And that doesn't mean that we push them through. It means that we work alongside them so that they can make the decision to change and the commitment to change on their own. A different way of saying it, MI is just another way of being with a person. It's not a set of techniques for doing counseling. And we will be talking a lot about the spirit of MI, and so that is the foundation from which we use the techniques. So motivational interviewing asks these questions with us. So who is your client? Is it the person paying for therapy? Is it the person referring that child for therapy? Or is it the person, and who has the motivation for therapy? Teachers? Parents? Siblings? So that they stop bugging them? And yet, who is in the room and who is expected to change? So sometimes all of these can have different answers, and no wonder the adolescents feel a lot of pressure and really resistant to change, right? Everybody with me? Good. So the spirit of MI, I'd like to talk a little bit about this because it really is the founding principles of MI. Without the MI spirit, we could just be using some of the techniques and not have the heart of it. And if you take nothing else from this presentation, I would love for you to take a little bit of the MI spirit when seeing your next client. Okay. So autonomy. Autonomy is a really important part of the spirit of MI because it is really looking at the respect and acceptance of the inherent worth of the client. Let me say that again. The respect and acceptance of the inherent worth of the client. We see the client as a whole person with resources and strength to change and grow and overcome. Collaboration, we've talked a little bit about this. And when we respect the autonomy of our clients, even though they're adolescents, we see the client as a partner. And we work with the client to guide them towards change. In the MI world, we say that MI is not done to a client, it is done with a client. Evocation. When we accept that our clients have the tools and reasons necessary for change, we need to evoke this and we need to pull this out. We need to see our clients not as a glass, an empty glass where we need to fill them with resources and skills. We need to see them as a well, where our job as a therapist is to bring these out to the surface so that they can see it and then use them. Okay? And when our clients start having the change talk, when they start saying, I need to change because, I have to change because, I will change because, then they are more likely to be persuaded by what they hear themselves say than the 5 other adults that have been telling them probably the same thing. Right? Oh, and the last one is compassion. This compassion and empathy enables us to understand our clients' lives and perspectives. And we have the desire, to promote our clients' welfare. And that is the most important of all the components, because without compassion, we cannot work alongside our clients, and our clients will feel it when we are out of touch with them. So there are 2 active components in the spirit of MI. The relational component of empathy and the interpersonal spirit of MI, and a technical component of evocation and reinforcement of the client change talk. Any questions so far? So, MI, the spirit is the founding principles with which we use the basic tools of MI. So, in the MI world, just so you all know, we like acronyms. We do a lot of acronyms, and this one is OARS. How do we connect with our clients and guide them toward change? We use our OARS. So, open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. I'm sure you all have seen this before. This is not rocket science. It's pretty basic, sound tools of basic good therapy, right? In MI, the difference is that we use them in a more targeted way to create those moments of change talk so that our clients can hear that and commit more to the behavioral change. I would like to talk a little bit about affirmations. Affirmations are really important for adolescents. Do you all know what an affirmation is in the MI world? Who'd like to take a stab at it?
Take a I mean, it can be as simple as thanking them for showing up for the appointment, or, you know, kind of like, giving them an attaboy for how much progress they've made since the beginning.
Yeah. So it's really strength-based, right? It's really looking at the resources that the clients have and pulling that out and highlighting that for them. Just like, thank you for coming in today, is really about saying that they had a choice to come in or not, and they did. Right? All of these strength-based affirmations are really important for clients because they really, adolescents particularly, because they really want to appear confident and strong and more mature. And so, instead of, and this is very different from compliments. Do you all know the difference between affirmations and compliments? Compliments is when you say, I think you have, your shirt is really nice. It's what I think about you. Really, it says nothing about what you think about yourself or how you view yourself. As opposed to, you have a great sense of style. That is a strength of yours, right? So, instead of saying, I like how you avoided that fight in school. That's really about what you like about the client. The client's like, okay, I don't really care whether you like that or not. Right? So, instead of saying that, you could say, you made the right decision in avoiding that fight, and you used your tools to control your emotions enough to make the right decision for yourself. That shows strength. That shows good decision-making skills. That shows control of emotions. That's something to be proud of. The message is still the same. I want you to continue to stop fighting. Yet, it's delivered in a very different way. Okay. Out of all of these, guess which one therapists use the least? Reflections? Actually, with reflections and open-ended questions, a lot of therapists use one or the other. So sometimes people ask a lot of questions, sometimes people reflect. It's actually affirmations that is used least in therapy sessions. In MI, sometimes we code our sessions to see how MI adherent that session is. And so we talk about ratios and we talk about how we're using the tools. And affirmations is almost across the board the least used tool. Guess which one has the most impact according to the clients? Affirmations. Okay. So, yes,
And this is particularly to adolescents or in general?
in general. But I found with my work with adolescents, it is vital.
I can see it with adolescents, but so it's interesting that even with adults, it would be the same level.
Yeah. It's actually, it's used a lot with, MI has been used in substance use, in mental health, in medical field, in corrections facilities. And so I actually had a client who had diabetes, an adult who had diabetes, and she refused to take her medication. She said it made her feel weird every single time, and she can't do it during work times and all that. And we talk about the value of how much she fights for her family. She fought really hard. She was a single mother. She worked really hard to put her two kids through school. They have a great relationship. She makes Sunday dinners every single week. So she put a lot into her family. And yet she wasn't taking medication. And so she didn't connect taking medication with taking care of her family. Whereas if she was not healthy, it was really difficult for her to take care of her family, right? So when we connected that and say, you work so hard for your family, they are the reason that you get up in the morning. Could they be a reason for you to take the medication? Yes. And that's a strength of her. She found that strength to fight and fight and fight, and this is a way that she can fight some more for her family. That was her identity. And when we brought that out, I brought that out in affirmation, and she said, oh, didn't make the connection. And yes, I am a fighter, and I'm going to fight this for my family. Does that make sense? These are the 4 principles of MI. I put second edition because the third edition, so in 2012, Bill Miller and Steve Rolnick put out the third edition. And so there's a little bit of the shift in the MI world with how we teach it, but for this presentation, I thought it was really important because of rolling with resistance. It's actually what I use the most with my clients. So let me go through the rest, and then we'll highlight rolling with resistance. So the 4 principles of MI: expressing empathy. That's pretty self-evident, right? Because if we don't join with our clients, how can our clients trust that they can pour their heart and soul and really examine different parts of their lives when they don't feel safe and we're not joining with them? So developing discrepancy is really looking at a lot of their values and their ideals and their motivation with their behavior. And so we take that discrepancy and we highlight it to give them more of a chance to move them towards direction change. We also amplify ambivalence, because when we feel 2 ways about something, sometimes we end up not moving, right? And so when we amplify that ambivalence towards the direction of change, we can help them make the right decisions for themselves. And supporting self-efficacy and eliciting change talk. That part is really important because when we need to change and we are not confident that we can make the change, we really just ignore it, forget about it. If I say, I'm going to lose 100 pounds, but I have 0 confidence in being able to do that, am I going to make the change? Well, I'm not. We're going to elicit change talk too, because the more they heal themselves safe, the more they're persuaded to do something about it. Rolling with resistance. We see resistance a lot in our adolescents, especially when we look at the list of the challenges, right? So how do they show us that they're resistant? Coming in late? I can't. Freezing us out. They love that. They love just staring and going, you think you can make me do something? Right? Not showing up at all? So MI really works with the resistance, because this happens all the time in early stages of change, of the techniques that we use in MI to roll with the resistance. You like the express empathy, develop discrepancy, rolling with resistance. We're kind of dorks in the MI world, but we are smart dorks, so don't count us out yet. Okay. So sometimes the best way to roll with resistance is to not fight at all. We can just reflect what they are saying. So when we don't fight, this avoids the power struggle that adolescents really love to get in with adults. Right? So if we say, you don't feel like anybody understands what you're going through, most likely they're not going to say, no, that's not true. Everybody understands what I'm going through. Probably not, right? They would probably agree with that. Or a double-sided reflection might be, you don't want to be here, and at the same time, you don't want to go back to juvie. I understand that you have this dilemma, right? What are you going to do about it? Sometimes shifting focus is a good idea. Unfortunately, adolescents don't typically come with just one issue when they get into our office, right? They have a whole host of problems. And I'm not suggesting that you ignore some really important topics, but you can strategically pick your battles. So saying, I understand that quitting weed is too difficult for you to even think about right now. What's another topic that you're more willing to look at? I'm not saying, so let's just forget about talking about quitting weed. I'm saying, let's put that at a pause and let's talk about something else. Let's talk about your relationship with your mother, which is a whole bigger issue and possibly will help with the quitting weed too. Agreement with a twist is a tricky one. It's comparable to paradoxic interventions. So, mostly be careful with this one. So, if you say, so your parents nag you about drinking during the weekends. Why don't you drink during the week? Scary thing to say, but if you've done your expressing empathy and you've joined with your client, then you could say, well, I can't show up drunk to school. My coach is going to cut me out of the football team. Oh, football team is really important to you. Well, yeah, it's the only reason I go to school. Okay, let's talk about why football team is really important to you, and maybe we can connect your drinking with football. And how does your drinking help with football? And give them the ambivalence and say, tell me how these two things work together. Emphasizing personal choice. This is also really tricky, and I usually get big eyes when I talk about this. And really, we need to understand that our clients, our adolescents, are going to do whatever they're going to do. And just because we say it doesn't mean they're going to do it, that they got the idea from us, right? So, saying, it's up to you whether or not you're going to run away. No one can force you to stay, which is a true statement. It's scary. The whole idea is that our clients are holding one end of the tug rope, and if we hold the other one, they're going to tug. And with presenting personal choice with them, there's nowhere for them to tug. Does that make sense? Yeah? If you see me tripping on this, please yell, because I have a tendency of just walking around, and for now, when I get get excited, I stop paying attention to where I stuff, so. Okay, reframing. Y'all probably know what reframing is. It's a reflection of what the client says, but with a slightly different perspective. So a client may say, I've tried everything to stop cutting. Everything. There's nothing that you can tell me that I haven't tried before. My client is pulling on the tug rope and making me tug the other way, right? Saying, well, have you tried snap bands? Have you tried breathing techniques? Have you tried ball? This and that and this and that. And they're going to say, yep, tried it, yep, tried it, yep, tried it, and that didn't happen, right? So if I say, you've tried everything. You have, nothing's worked and yet you keep trying. This must be really important for you. And then they can't tug against that. No, it's not that important for me. Oh, really? That's interesting, because you keep trying. That shows me that you care. And if all else fails, go back to empathy. Really think about how hurt and frustrated our clients are, especially adolescents. They are in these two worlds of one foot being a child and one foot being an adult with zero power about it. It's a pretty frustrating place. So, we just have a few minutes left. I'm gonna give you some concrete tools to work with adolescents that I found to be really useful in my practice. So one is value sorting. So value sorting is a tool to hone in on the values and ideals that the client holds. For some adolescents, some of these values may be freedom, privacy, friendships. Yet we can't assume that. We need to evoke those values from our clients because only they know what's important for them. They actually, online, they actually have these cards that are for value sorting. So you can, it's like a deck of cards with values, with freedom, family, privacy, like all of these, independence, all of these cards that you can use. I've never actually needed that, but it's a good tool to have. But I've never really needed that because my clients will tell me in our conversation what is important to them. So, using and instead of but or either or. This is huge with adolescents because and is going to be your best friend. Because when we use but, as in, you are intelligent, affirmation, but you seem to make choices that get you into trouble. That word but negates the first part of the sentence, right? You're telling me I'm dumb. You're just cushioning it with you are intelligent. They probably didn't hear that you are intelligent. And when adolescents feel negated, it takes a really long time to gain back their trust. So I would invite you to start using and. When you say, you are intelligent, and at the same time, you seem to make choices that get you into trouble. Tell me how these two things coexist in your mind. I want to know and understand what are curiosities. How many of us know adolescents who are intelligent and makes bad choices? right? How many of you are intelligent and makes bad choices? Okay. Using the adolescent's own language. That is also really important and addresses the generation gap. I have a client right now who's been using heroin, and she can't even say the word heroin because she feels so guilty with everything that she's done because of heroin. And so now we're stuck. How can we talk about it and continue her sobriety when we can't even say the H word? She actually said the H word. And so after exploring, we decided to give it a different name, which is black, which is a street name for heroin. And actually, I didn't know that. She told me that. And she said, once you go black, you can't go back, to me. And I was like, that is way out of context. I don't know what you're trying to say. And then she told me. And so that makes sense to me. To me, that is in her mind, that she is now stuck. That heroin has ruined a lot of her life. She has actually lost custody of her child. That she was, that when she was pregnant with that daughter, she was using. And yet she feels stuck with it. So, we talk about black flag. And then a couple more concrete tools. How many of you have done pros and cons of change? Ad infinitum, right? And yet, most clinicians end up talking about the pros of change and the cons of no change. That's our tendency to do because we want to push the client forward. Why wouldn't you do your schoolwork? Why wouldn't you stop doing your doing drugs? You would get that scholarship to that school that you want if you stopped using drugs. And you would ruin your running to get that scholarship if you didn't stop, right? Whereas I would submit that the most important parts of this are the cons of change or the pros of no change. Because those are the quadrants that are like gravity for clients towards homeostasis. And when we don't connect to these quadrants, they're not going to change. Does that make sense? So next time.
An example of those of
Yeah. So in that, stopping using drugs or football, right? So the pros of no change is that may be his whole social life. That may be what he does with his girlfriend. And his girlfriend, at this point in time, is more important than the football scholarship. So the cons of no change would be, he might not have any friends left. He might lose his popularity with his friends, his status in school. If he stayed at home on a Friday night because he can't resist using drugs at a party. Does that make sense? Is that clearer?
But once it's insightful to the client, how do they get to homeostasis at that point?
These are the ones, this quadrant and this quadrant are the reasons that they're in homeostasis of no change. Those are the reasons.
Okay.
Yeah, and so when we don't address this, and guess who's been addressing these? Everybody else. Parents teachers, coaches, right? Everybody's been talking about that. No one's talking about this. Last tool is the importance and confidence ruler. This is pretty, but you can definitely use it without an actual ruler, so that's good. So, just like most things in life, the journey towards change is on a continuum. And even though a lot of our adolescents go, oh, work in all or nothing, that may not be the case. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to quit using cocaine? I'm at a 7. Oh, why not at a 6? Well, because my parents don't really have money for me to go to college. And so I need that scholarship to be able to go to college, and I can't really do it. And then my coach says if I don't stop using, then he's gonna kick me out of the program. Oh, so that's your motivation. That's why it's important for you. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you could stop using coke? Well, I'm at a 7. Okay. What would it take for you to be at an 8? Well, if I had another activity on a Friday night, that could be an excuse of why I'm not partying with my friends. That'll be a little bit easier. All right, let's think about that. Let's think about other activities that you would like to do. Does that make sense? This one took me a little bit longer to use in practice effectively. So don't worry about it if it's a little cloudy.
So kids who are on the spectrum, what kind of accommodations for that population are you using this tool? Because you're asking for gradation here, and so that population struggles with that.
Yeah, and I would say it depends. Because if a client is higher on the spectrum, they may understand nuances. Or if they are lower on the spectrum, then this might not be a tool that you would use. But they probably, they would understand the reasoning. Oh, that's sticky.
So,
Does that make sense? Sorry, hold on.
Oh, no, I'm going to struggle with that because kids who are high on the spectrum will still have gradation. So is there anything else that you use to supplement, to support that concept? I like the concept. But this is when we've discovered something, support using that tool with the population.
You know, what I've found is, I haven't used this with this ruler with kids in the spectrum. I would verbalize it, and I would create a list. I would use the pros and cons more, and then talk about how confident are you and what makes you confident. Like, instead of saying how confident are you, what makes you confident that you can do this?
See, it's those, the what, when, how, that language throws a curve at.
Do you have an idea?
Well, I've used this quite a bit, and it's interesting. I actually just draw a big ruler on the board, and in a group, I ask them to go up there and stand. And so I do one and then the other, and it's interesting, they are very upfront and honest about what they're, and where they're at, and if, what
use this in a group. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Have you ever used it with kids on the spectrum? The developmental spectrum?
Yeah,
No?
Autism spectrum.
Yeah, autism spectrum.
I did AOP, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know. I'll keep thinking about that. And if you leave me your card, if I think of something, I'll let you know. And if you find something, please let me know, because I'm always looking for resources. Yes, Tom?
So, everyone, you know, if you're in treatment, generally speaking, you lack the ability to make change, right? But sometimes I'll get people to throw like odd numbers at me, like 10, 10. You know, it's really important for me to change, and I'm confident I could change. So why are you sitting here? You know, I mean, it's kind of the natural knee-jerk reaction, but of course you just driven them backwards, right? So what do you do when people throw like odd answers like that at you?
I joke with them.
Yeah.
I joke a lot with my adolescents. Oh, really? Is that, what are you gonna do? Tonight, you're gonna help your mom cook, right? Instead of going out to party, oh my gosh, what are you gonna make? Tamales? Oh my gosh, you're gonna have to get me some, because that's gonna be delicious. Now let's get back to reality.
And you just gotta like reframe it,
Yeah, because it's sass, right? It could be resistance.
I've kind of done, you know, well, gee, you know, I would expect that, like, if you were here, like, you know, that somehow or another that you probably tried to quit before, because no one wants to stand up here, right? So have you quit before? You know, and then just kind of like get them to elicit the fact that they're struggling with it a little bit. And, you know, what's changed that now it's like 10?
And maybe they are one of those kids who want to be in treatment. We don't know.
Yeah.
So I would ask a lot of questions about why they're in the situation that they're in. I had a client who, I was telling Gabriella this, I work with kids who have been kicked out of the regular placement school and have been in juvie and now have probation officers. And I had 2 kids who kept offending so that they could keep going to juvie. Because in juvie, you get food. And at home, you don't get food. In juvie, you are safe, and there's an adult who's gonna intervene if there's a fight. And at home, my stepfather is an asshole, and I cannot predict what he's doing. And my mom's not doing anything about it. 2 clients. And if I said, nobody wants to be here, right? Because really, nobody wants to be there. And yet for them, they would rather be there. And so I would keep looking. And then the joining part is for them to put their defenses down. Because some of these kids have needed to be strong. That's how they've gotten into this situation, because they're hurting and they want to cope with it. So, we are at the end. There are some limitations of MI in adolescents. It's really not indicated for children under 12. If you have a really sophisticated 12-year-old, that's fantastic. But it does need a certain level of insight. It's also not indicated for crises or forwardly psychotic clients, because they definitely need to understand their values and motivations. And if you can't have a logical conversation, MI might not be for it. So these are some of the resources if you'd like to write them down. These 3 books are actually in the back. They are mine. I don't get any kickbacks for the books, but these are just what I've used and I found useful. Okay. And if there's anything that you find interesting, I'm going to be having an intro and application of motivational interviewing training in my private practice, so there's a flyer back there. If those 8 hours, we actually get to practice a lot of the skills. So it'll be an exciting day.